One thing that was really important to my family when I was LDS was the history of our church and our connection to that history. It was never just abstract. There was always a connection. These events helped shape our identity. And I think that's called heritage. So when you take history and you put it with, you put yourself in it and it shapes your identity, that's called heritage. And so we're going to talk about heritage. And I'm here with Mary Jane, and she has a really interesting LDS heritage. And we're going to see that the LDS identity is really shaped by that historical heritage. So your family takes great pride in certain elements of your heritage. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my great-great-grandfather was the third prophet of the Mormon Church, John Taylor.
Yeah.
And all, on both sides, my mother's and father's, we have Mormon heroes.
Heroes. Well,
Yeah.
John Taylor, he was in the Carthage jail with Joseph Smith.
Yes, yeah,
So
he
there's a
was.
lot of
Yeah.
heroism in the
A
Mormon
lot of
story.
it, yeah. And there's a lot of pride, and it is my heritage. It's identity and who we are, and it's one of the things that I betrayed when I left the Mormon Church. Like, how could I betray that? And
that's one that makes it hard for a lot of people to say, you know, there's this whole weight of history and heritage on my shoulders that I'm rejecting, betraying, as you said. Yeah.
It was difficult. So I mean, there's family stories. There, not a day goes by that my mother doesn't talk about something about the heritage, and it's pride, and that's who we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see it in so many LDS families. And it's reflected in so many, because every family seems to have a story, right?
Yeah.
That connects them to some significant event in LDS history.
Yeah.
And the farther back you go, and back to Joseph Smith,
yeah.
the bigger a deal
Yeah.
it is, and you gain status and
Yeah.
in the society, and
Yeah.
So I remember after I'd left the church, my wife was never Mormon, and we went to we were living in Illinois. We went to the Carthage jail, and it was supposed to be a historical museum. It was a spiritual event, So people were weeping, and just as they told the story of Joseph Smith's martyrdom, people were weeping, and it was like they saw themselves in that story.
Yeah.
It was very powerful, reinforcing their sense of who they are as these people. So now it's true that I think heritage shapes everyone's identity.
Sure.
Not just LDS people. So we're not just singling out Mormons. But that can be a good thing. Now, if you're leaving Mormonism, and sometimes that's part of the loss that you undergo, is that you lose that sense of heritage. You lose that sense of that identity that's tied up in, my ancestors crossed the plains on a covered wagon or in a handcart, or were persecuted in Missouri, or what it might be.
Yeah.
But I guess what I want to encourage our viewers today is that Christians also have a rich heritage that strengthens our identity in Christ.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the things, as you look back, as you've learned about the history of Christianity, what are some of the features of that history that help us really understand who we are in Christ and that really strengthen our walk with God?
Yeah. It's just so exciting to me, the history that I wasn't aware of, and to fill in all those blanks at that time is just amazing to me, and to see that God was moving always. He's always moving, and that there are people and stories that are like mine too, that they left their maybe religion that didn't want them to go and be missionaries and spread the truth, and they left and were rejected, and that just even the history of the wars, how that spread Christianity, that God used everything, and He's been on the move always.
Right, and so this idea that God has always been on the move is so huge, because even, I know as Americans, we can be a little European-centric, Eurocentric as we look at history, and we're very unaware of the history of other parts of the world.
Right.
But Christianity is not just a European a phenomenon,
No.
right?
Right.
So God's been
Right.
moving
Yeah.
other cultures as well.
Yeah, it's global. When we had what we call the Dark Ages, life was thriving in Spain and in the Middle East, and God was on the move there, and people were coming to know who Jesus was, and it's just there's so much, and it's a rich history and it's a rich heritage that we have as followers of Jesus, that it never did stop. We're part
Yeah.
of that bigger
We're part of
global
something
group.
huge that's
Yeah.
global and that has been at
Yeah.
work in some amazing ways. You know, you mentioned other parts of the world, and I just thought, you know, there's been a Christian presence in India,
Yeah.
possibly all the way back to the apostles.
Yeah.
You know, and so places that we wouldn't think about. The Dark
Right.
Ages in one
Yeah,
place might
yeah.
not have been dark somewhere else.
Right.
And we're part of that.
We
You
are.
know, that's our possession
Yeah.
as Christians. We're connected with that all across the globe.
Our heritage.
And another part of our heritage that you touched on a second ago is you can see the example of other people who maybe have experienced what you've experienced. And so I think a rich part of our heritage are the sort of, you could call them heroes of the faith, or faithful
Yeah.
people throughout history who have been obedient to God, even at a cost.
Right,
You know,
right.
at different times and places, people
Right.
have been faithful to their calling as Christians.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so there's many. I mean, any particular names spring to mind for you?
Well, the Moravians,
Okay.
who were in, I think, the 15th century and then revived in the 16th century. I might have those dates wrong.
Yeah.
But I know in the 17th century in Czechoslovakia, or what was known as that, they're this group of very faithful people who gave everything to the gospel, and they sent missionaries all over the world. And these are things that I had never heard about.
Right.
And they still exist today
Yeah.
somewhat, but there's other people like Hudson Taylor and people who gave their lives to further the kingdom on
Yeah.
earth, and that we don't really, I never knew about. And there's many missionaries that have given their lives and
Yeah.
sacrificed everything.
Yeah.
So
And we're part of that.
Yeah.
And the diversity of the global Christian movement. That Jesus really launched this movement. He didn't start a denomination or
Right.
necessarily a church. He started a church, but the
Movement.
church is all the people who belong to him through time and space. He started this global movement, and it has taken shape in such rich and interesting ways in different cultures around the world. So, I mean, when I've traveled, I've worshiped with Christians in other countries. We have this common bond,
Right.
even though I can't speak their language and they're part of a different maybe stream of Christianity. We have this deep common bond. I'm part of that. I
Right.
get to be part of that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage our viewers that really, when you understand Christian history, you start to study a little bit, and we'll put some links below on some resources that you could get into. But when you study it a little bit, you realize that you're really part of something much larger than anything you left behind. So let that be an encouragement to you today, and we hope that will seal your sense of identity in Christ, that you're just part of this amazing thing that God's been doing around the world for centuries, and now he's included you and I. So thanks for watching today.